Hello, guys. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. We're back at it. We are going to discuss about data science and related topics. We are in this session, a kind of series where we will be talking about oil and gas, but with a different perspective, with a data-driven perspective. You've seen the first discussion where Jayesh explained very nicely about. If you haven't, please go and watch that video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. So we talked about various things. We talked about what is exploratory data analysis, and Jayesh explained the various meaningful conclusions that we can take out of it, right? So today we will be discussing a few more things, very nice and important things. Just before we get to it, we have with us today Mr. Kushagra Mittal, who is a very nice friend, and he's been a very nice experience in a very interesting domain, which is not pretty conventional as far as petroleum engineers go, but his domain can be expanded to a variety of industries, right? So he is working as a risk and reliability engineer at Oceaneering, and I personally like that domain very much. It interests me a lot. So it's a great honor and great opportunity to have him with us. We also have Jayesh, who explained things very nicely, and we will be discussing very nice things today as well. Before we get to it, Kushagra, great to have you here. Can you please give the audience, the students and people who are in this domain, a hint of what you do and how can it be very useful, and what is your reason for enthusiasm in data science with your domain? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Divyanshu. It's great to be a part of this session. So, as you mentioned, that this is kind of a different domain as to how we perceive conventional petroleum engineering. So, basically, what I have to do is create preventive maintenance plans, assess equipment criticality, perform spare parts management, and building asset hierarchy for different oil and gas assets. But it's just not limited to this. It's a very wide field in which we have to perform reliability analysis, decide how quickly an equipment can fail, what is the frequency of failure, and how can we increase the lifeline of an asset. So coming on to why data science interests me is because conventionally we see in the oil and gas that we are still following age-old practices that were developed in the 20th century. And we can surely use data science now because we generate a lot of data in oil and gas industry, and using that data we can predict how we can improve our assets. So it's great to be a part. Over to you.
Very interesting. So, two real catchy words that I could find from there were predictive maintenance and data. So, very interesting domain. A lot of people who have been practicing machine learning. I guess Jayesh as well. He has practiced this thing. I saw a post by you, Jayesh, on LinkedIn a few days back. It was about predictive maintenance, right? A very interesting
Yes,
application
yes.
of machine learning. It's a great and very applied data driven. One of the most, I guess, according to me, as far as my experience is concerned, as far as engineering goes, like we are petroleum engineers, be it mechanical engineers, be it any core engineer would like to understand predictive maintenance, right? Because it's important. And Kushagra brings to the table the understanding of the domain, like the analytical understanding of this domain, whereas Jayesh has already worked on the data side of things on the same topic. So it's great to have two people having worked on both sides of the things. So coming back, we will surely get to this discussion as we go along. So we will be discussing about our topic for today, which is performance metrics for classification. For always, I would just give you a brief introduction to people who have no experience in data science. Classification and regression, or prediction, you can call it. These are two legs of common data science applications. For example, if I want to use data to make a model that can predict the height of someone, that's a regression, right? I can, for example, let's call it, suppose I can take in the weight of a person, it's his BMI and stuff like that, and I use all these inputs to calculate the height. Now, height is a continuous variable, so it becomes a regression problem, right? So that's not the discussion for today. Today we are going to focus on other side of things. For example, what if I want to make a machine learning model that helps me decide whether something is a cat or a dog, whether something is a yes or a no, whether based on what data that we take as an input, whether it is zero or a one, like a classification. We have two classes. For example, we can look at an email, and everyone knows this. If you go to your Gmail account, you see emails automatically getting into your spam folder, right? So you must understand that that is a very common application of machine learning. Gmail has its own proprietary machine learning algorithm that works without any explicit coding, that works as soon as an email comes in. It tracks whatever words are there. Now, words are the inputs for this model. And based on the number of words, and for example, suppose an email comes with 100% off or some kind of sale or something like that. So machine understands that this might be a scam. So it takes it and puts it into a spam folder. Whereas something like please find this attachment or something very important goes to your main folder, which is the important folder. So that's a very common example of what classification is. Now, to explain classification, if we have made a model on classification, it's very important to check or validate the performance of that particular model. And that's exactly what Jayesh will bring to you today. We'll talk about various metrics, which are nothing but ways to check the performance. So take it away, Jayesh. Over to you.
Hello, yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, first we train a machine learning model. You also mentioned this email spamming and all those things. We are going to discuss that those things also. So yeah. So first of all, what is performance metrics and why do we need performance metrics? Okay, so in a machine learning project, suppose you have done all the things till training a model. You have collected the data, you have performed the exploratory data analysis, you have selected the features, you have split the data into training data and testing data, and finally you have trained a good model. So now you need to check how good that model is on a unseen data. So for evaluating the effectiveness of a model, we will use the performance matrices. Here comes the role of performance matrices at the last step of a machine learning project, you can say. So yeah, here I have shown an example that let us suppose I trained a model that can detect the difference between a dog face and a cat face. I have given it a number of examples, a number of training examples of dog images and cat images. And after training the model, I want to test that how good this model is working. So the first and the most commonly used performance metrics comes into role is accuracy. As the name suggests, this will be the ratio of correctly classified points to the total number of points. For example, I have inputted the image of a dog in my trained model. So my model predicted that okay, it is a dog, and actually it is a dog. So it is a correct label from my trained model. But if I inputted the image of a cat and it have predicted the dog, then that will be defined as incorrect label. So in that way, accuracy can be defined as ratio of total correctly predicted image correctly predicted by the trained model divided by the total number of points that we have given in the testing data. So yeah, there are also the limitations of accuracy. You cannot use accuracy in every use case because every problem is different. So it is optimized in a different way. For example, if I want to predict the number of asteroid that will hit the earth, and I am too lazy to make a model, so I just programmed a dummy model that is going to predict zero every time, that the earth is never gonna be hit by any asteroid, and still it will be 99% accurate. As in 1 in 100 there is chance that an asteroid will hit the earth, but my classifier is a dummy, so the use of accuracy in this case is not any valuable, doesn't have any value for us. Other example of this is other example of limitation of accuracy is while we are making a predictive maintenance model. As my friend Kushagar Mittal is here, as a risk reliability engineer, he can understand this, that okay, if I am making some predictive maintenance model, for example, let us say I am building a model that can predict the failure of a given pump, mud pump, you can say, and that pump is having 5 components, or leave the components. We are just predicting that after how many times the pump is going to fail. So the total data set that will be used for training this predictive maintenance will be an unbalanced data set. Unbalanced in a way that most part of this data set will be corresponding to correctly working pump data, and only 0.01% or 1% of the total data will be corresponding to the points that are labeled as incorrect, that are labeled as not working as a pump. So in that case, using of accuracy for a performance metrics is not valuable or is not usable. So yeah, here you can say that I have mentioned this thing. When data is highly imbalanced, even dummy classifier can give us accuracies like 99%. So it is not a reliable performance metrics in case of imbalanced data set. When the data set is balanced and it's not skewed, is normally distributed, in that case you can use accuracy. So how to overcome this limitation? For overcoming this limitation, we have some other matrices that we can use for evaluating our trained model. For example, one of my most favorite matrix is confusion
Jayesh,
matrix. Yeah,
I have something to say. I would like your input as well on this. You gave a very nice example of why accuracy is not a great metrics. Yes, today's discussion is about other metrics where we can use other sort of techniques to check whether a model is good or not. But this is something that I have been thinking about from quite a long time, from the first day I got into this. Uh, is it also not a data side of problem? Like if we want accuracy to be a valid metric, can we not make the data balanced? Like, for
yeah,
example,
yes,
this is
yes,
something Andrew, the great Andrew NG, he also says he in his videos, he's a strict follower of data quality, right? So if you, for example, I am an engineer, I don't know other metrics, right? I don't know what you are going to tell me next. I only know accuracy, but I also know the limitation of accuracy. So if
yes,
possible, yes, that's a different kind of scenario, because in predictive maintenance, yes, of course, we cannot expect to have the same number of cases for failure as the same as the number of cases for success, right?
yes,
So that's a different scenario. But for example, dog versus cat, I can afford to have a balanced data set, right?
yes,
So is it
yes,
fair to say, and I guess it is, it's fair to say that if in case of affordable data collection, we can collect data to match a scenario where accuracy is a good metric.
yes, yes. We can say
Does it make sense?
yes, we can reduce the data, as we can say that for the imbalanced data set, if one type of class is more present, then we can reduce that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is also an
We
option.
can reduce or we can increase the other class, right?
Increase
Yeah.
the other class,
That's
yeah,
like,
by
yeah,
adding
yeah.
synthetic data, you can say. Yeah, that is also an
Synthetic
option.
data.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Just
have
a
a
thought. Yeah.
question regarding
Sure,
that.
sure. Yeah.
If you are modifying the data, won't it affect the overall accuracy of your data set? I mean, let's say I am just regarding the cat and dog example, or regarding this asteroid example, I'm saying that, okay, we'll have 10 hits out of 100, but in
yes.
reality, we will only have one hit. So that way, if you are modifying the data, won't it give you inaccurate results?
No,
Yes,
I would like to explain it with a fundamental way the model trains, because model is understanding the relationship between inputs and outputs. So I would rather go in the opposite direction. It would rather improve the model accuracy, because we are giving it equal amount of instances where it understands, it gets good time to understand and good data to understand the class A, as well as equally good time to understand what inputs correspond to class B, right? So we have both kinds of worlds where the model is now able to understand both kinds of worlds. on normal Earth, we always have 99% cases where no asteroid hits the Earth. So that way, Earth is a bad classification model for accuracy metric. But suppose on Jupiter, let's assume 50% chances are there that the asteroid will hit compared to 1% on Earth. And if we train a machine learning model on data from Jupiter, now the machine understands what kind of conditions lead to an asteroid hitting and what kinds of conditions leads to an asteroid not hitting. We take that model, bring it, make some modification to Earth. That can be a great model to predict whether an asteroid is going to hit. And all we need is accuracy to judge that model because we used that model on 50-50 data rather than 99-1 data. So that is my opinion on that. Jesh, do you
Yes,
have any
yes.
other opinion?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, we can do both. So the first, the first approach should be like this. Okay, if we can improve our data, that is the best case scenario. But if it is not possible,
Yeah.
that if, there are certain problems in which we are not, we cannot afford either to reduce the data set or to add some synthetic data. In that cases, we need to move on to some other performance matrices. According to my view, this will be our approach. If we are having an option to improve our data, yeah, is it for our problem statement, if it is possible that yeah, I can afford to improve the data, I can afford to remove some of the uh, data points from my data, in that thing I can do that. But if we are not in that case, so
Definitely.
we have other options also. Yeah.
And
So
talking about petroleum, like offshore engineering and stuff,
yes,
we don't really have such affordable cases. So
exactly.
let's give importance to what's coming ahead. Go ahead, Jesh.
Yes, exactly.
Very
For
important.
example, I want to add an example here. For example, if we are making any predictive maintenance of a drill ship, so we cannot afford to delete some of the data points from that data set, as many lives will be dependent on that decision only. Okay. So yeah, confusion matrix, one of the my most favorite performance matrix for evaluating the my machine learning model. I will tell why. So in my confusion matrix is nothing but it will give us a summary of predicted result, as you can see from this figure. As you can see that the columns are corresponding to the actual values and the rows are corresponding to the predicted values. Here I am taking a class of binary classification. So, okay, you can see that if my actual value is positive and my predicted value is also positive, that thing is termed as true positive. Or the total number of cases, let us suppose total number of cases are n. And out of those n cases, actual positive cases and predictive positive cases both are positive, that number of cases will be TP, true positive. Okay, and similarly, if the actual value is negative, but our algorithm has predicted it as positive, that thing is termed as false positive, as you can see from the name only, false positive. In a similar way, false negative and true negative are also present. So what happens in a confusion matrix, when we use confusion matrix for evaluating some machine learning model, we can actually visualize the results. So yeah, so once again, I want to came up the topic of accuracy. From here, you can see that what will be the definition of accuracy. Accuracy will be the sum ratio of sum of true positive and true negative to the total sum of all the cases. Okay. So now for a good trained model, the principal diagonal, for a good trained model, I want these values to be as high as it is possible. And I want to reduce the values of false positive and false negative. If a model is having less number of false positive and false negative, that is the best machine learning model. And for this is an example of binary classification. For multi-class classification, we can also use confusion matrix. The only difference will be that, like here, it is a 2 cross 2 matrix. In a multi-class classification, it will be C cross C, C cross C matrix, where C are the class labels. Like for example, I have multi-class labels 1 to 5. So the confusion matrix for that will be 5 cross 5. Each point again corresponding to what is the actual value, like actual value was 2 and my predicted value was 3, so that will come in the point of 2 cross 3. For confusion matrix, we can also use heat maps so that we can enhance visual inspections only. So yeah, the
The one
next.
thing I always follow, can you please go back to the slide? Like one thing for the users also. The easiest, I think, great that Jayesh likes this metrics a lot. I also like this way of checking performance of a classification model. All you have to do is what Jayesh is going to tell you, a heat map of this classification metrics. What you have to do is look at the diagonal, the principal diagonal. The more the number of elements or the count of the diagonal must be very high. For the best model, you must, I think we should make our own metric, right? We
Yeah.
should just calculate the sum of all the elements in the metric, in the diagonal, and find the ratio. And higher this ratio, better the model. Let's conclude that. Why not,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because
yes,
this takes
exactly.
into account accuracy as well. If it was a perfectly accurate model, everything else would be zero, right? Everything, there will be no
Yes,
false negatives, false
the
positives and all.
positives.
So accuracy is also taken care of. Everything else is taken care of, basically, in a way.
Yes. So
So I
moving
think
on. Yeah,
about,
sorry.
yeah,
Yeah,
move
yeah.
on. That's it. Yeah.
So yeah, moving on to next performance metrics, it is precision, as you can see from the name. So what exactly is precision? It is the proportion of predictive positive that are truly positive. So okay, my machine learning trained model has predicted something as positive. Here we are taking two classes, positive and negative. So if my machine learning algorithm has predicted something as positive, so precision will tell us, okay, what is the chance that it is exactly it is positive. For example, in asteroid prediction problem, true positive was never predicted, as we have never predicted that asteroid is hitting the earth. So in that case the precision was zero. So when we can use precision metrics, when we want to be very sure about our prediction, we want to reduce the false positive. When we want to reduce the false positive cases, in that case we need to use precision. For example, as in the beginning, Divyanshu sir talked about the spam emails. So yeah, in spam emails case, identification of spam emails is not that important as compared to if we are going to ignore some important email, or you can understand in this way that we are reducing the false positive. So if a mail is predicted as spam and it was actually not a spam, it was some important email, like it was some hiring email. So if it was predicted as spam, it will go to spam folder. So that can make us a loss. So in these cases, we need to have a high precision. Okay. So we can say in other words that if a model is predicting positive, then it need to be positive. If a model is predicting that yes, this email is spam, then it needs to be spam. It is not like that. Okay, it is not spam. In those cases, we will use precision. So yeah, the next
Jayesh,
the
is it fair to say that the RT-PCR test for COVID-19, it has
yeah,
high precision? Because it never rarely gives false positives, right? The false positive rate is very less, I have heard.
yeah.
So in
But
that
in
case, also it's very important a model should be, for example, false positive it was high, then that's also good, right?
yeah, that's
In
also
that
good
case, what?
in these cases. Like for a cancer detection or COVID detection, we need to have a less number of false negative compared to false positive.
Yes, yes, that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, the matrix that comes into play is known as recall. So recall is what proportion of actual positive is correctly classified. So in recall, what we do is we want to capture as much positive as we can. As you can see in the formula for the recall, that it is true positive divided by total number of true positive and false negative, or you can say total number of uh, exactly that are positive, actual positive, true positive divided by total number of actual positive. So when to use this can be used in the cases when we need to reduce the false negative. For example, in cancer prediction, we cannot afford that some test has predicted that okay, this guy doesn't have cancer, but actually he was having a cancer. In that case, we need to have a model that is having a high recall value. So if the model is
So
predicting negative, then it need to be negative. In that case, we use recall. Yes, sir.
So just for audience to remember, because for me also, so if we have, let's say, a lot of people who have COVID, recall means the number of people that must be called to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
In any case, like any people, because in case of diseases, recall is should be high, right? The number of people who the doctor should call should be high. And also, like in serious cases, recall is important. In other
Yes.
cases, like emails and all, it's fine, right?
Precision.
You
Yeah.
can go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great,
Well,
great,
yeah,
great
one
example.
more example I want to give in precision, like if someone is a data scientist in a Flipkart or any company like Flipkart or Amazon, and some big billion day is coming, so he is going to make a model that will predict, okay, from the past user experience, that this guy is going to purchase above 5,000 on this coming big billion day. So I will give him a coupon of 2,000, so he can purchase more, so that will be profitable to our company. So in that case, if model fails to predict the guy that which customer is going to purchase more than 5,000, or you can say that false positive is coming, so in that case that will result in the loss of the company. So in those cases we need to have a high precision. Okay. So now moving on the next matrix known as F1 score. F1 score is actually the harmonic mean of precision as well as and recall. It is used when we want to have a model that is having both good precision and good recall. So simply F1 score kind of maintains a balance between precision and recall for our classifier. So what happens there? There in precision and recall, there is always, like, if sometimes precision is more and sometimes recall is more. So in that case, F1 score needs to be there so that it maintains a good balance between precision and recall. And one of the example is that, consider that you are a police inspector and you want to catch criminals. So you want to be sure that the person you catch is a criminal. Here it comes that false positive need to be less. It doesn't be like you captured a guy and he was not a criminal, you are catching a innocent guy. That will be bad for you. And also you want to capture as many criminals as possible, so you want to reduce the false negative also. So in that case, when we want to have good precision as well as good recall, we use this F1 score. So that F1 score manages the trade-off between precision and recall, as there is a trade-off between precision and recall that we can discuss in our next video. Yeah, that's from my side on these topics.
I think that's a great explanation, Jayesh, and I think it was very elaborate. We have taken quite a while to explain, and I guess a lot of more topics are left. Like this opens a great discussion. So I think we will continue the discussion over successive sessions, maybe, and this will be helpful for us also and for the audience also. So thank you, Jayesh, for this very crisp and full of examples kind of explanation that I like. People will definitely enjoy it. Thank you, Kushagra. We will definitely keep you with us and not let you go for next few sessions. And let's hope we have more and more such discussions going on. So thank you, guys. See you in the next video. Thanks a lot.